Hello children, welcome back to the class. In today's class, first we are going to discuss about parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis, it's a Greek term. The meaning for this term parthenogenesis means virgin birth. Parthenos means virgin, genesis means production. Produced in the virgin condition, or simply called as virgin birth. So, how can we define parthenogenesis? Parthenogenesis refers to the development of embryo from an unfertilized egg. You might be knowing about the concept of sexual reproduction. In the last class, we have discussed about the sexual reproduction. In a sexual reproduction, the male and the female gametes fuse together and results in the formation of zygote. Then the zygote develops into embryo and then to the new organism. Whereas in parthenogenesis, the embryo is formed without the act of fertilization. There is no fusion of male and female gametes. Here, the female gamete, that is the egg, without the act of fertilization, it has the ability to straight away convert into the embryonic form. And then the embryo then develops into a new individual. So, this is how the parthenogenesis occurs. That is, the development of embryo from an unfertilized egg is called as parthenogenesis. It is a type of asexual reproduction. There is no involvement of sperm fusion. Only the unfertilized egg get converted into an embryo. So this is what we call it as parthenogenesis, and this phenomenon was discovered first by Charles Bonnet in the year 1745. Speaking about the types of parthenogenesis, there are two types of parthenogenesis. One is natural parthenogenesis, another one is artificial parthenogenesis. Natural parthenogenesis. This is the type which occurs in nature. There are certain organisms where naturally the parthenogenesis occurs in its life cycle. It is not something influenced or induced. It occurs as a part of the life cycle. That is, it occurs naturally in the life cycle of an organism. Such a type of parthenogenesis that occurs naturally in the life of an organism is called as natural parthenogenesis. There are three types of natural parthenogenesis. One is complete parthenogenesis, the second one is incomplete parthenogenesis, and the third one is pedogenetic parthenogenesis. So these are the three different types of natural parthenogenesis. Let us discuss one by one. Natural parthenogenesis is further classified into three types. One is complete parthenogenesis, then incomplete parthenogenesis and pedogenic parthenogenesis. The first type is said to be the complete parthenogenesis. So what happens in this phenomenon? In complete parthenogenesis, the organism reproduces only by parthenogenesis, that is, sexual reproduction is totally absent in those organisms. There are few organisms, in that organisms there is no sexual reproduction. The organism undergoes only the parthenogenesis. There is no biparental fusion. Right? Only females will be there, and the females produces the new individuals by the act of parthenogenesis. No male species are identified in those organisms. It is also called as obligate parthenogenesis. Obligate means compulsory or mandatory, right? So mandatorily the organism reproduces only through the parthenogenesis. That is why it is called as obligate parthenogenesis or complete parthenogenesis. So the example is a rotifer species. It is a protestant ciliate organism. So Deloid rotifer, this is the species. It is not given in your book. but this is a species where we can able to notice the complete parthenogenesis. So in complete parthenogenesis, the organism gives birth to the young one only by means of parthenogenesis, and the sexual reproduction is totally absent. Only females are present, no males. And the second type of natural parthenogenesis is incomplete parthenogenesis. In these organisms, both sexual reproduction as well as parthenogenesis both will occur. Both the phases we can able to notice in those organisms. At one specific point there occurs the sexual reproduction, whereas on the other hand also occurs the parthenogenesis. Both phenomena will take place in certain organisms. So those organisms which show these type of dual reproduction is called as incomplete parthenogenesis or partial parthenogenesis. The best example is honeybees, right? If you look at the image, so this is the queen bee, right? You know, honeybees are the social insects. They live in groups or colonies. So this is the queen bee. Only one queen bee will be there in a bee comb. So this queen bee, after mating with the male, right? So those eggs which are fertilized by the males get deployed in condition, and these eggs either get converted into worker bees. Worker bees are always female, and one of the female offspring will get converted into a queen bee. So always the fertilized egg is converted into females, either queen or worker. Whereas on the other hand, the unfertilized eggs which are haploid in condition will straight away by the means of parthenogenesis convert into a male one, which is called as drone. Here we can able to notice, so the production of females is by normal sexual reproduction, whereas the production of males is purely by parthenogenesis. Thus both sexual reproduction as well as parthenogenesis is noticed in honeybees. So this type of parthenogenesis is what we call it as incomplete parthenogenesis. The third type of natural parthenogenesis is pedogenetic parthenogenesis, right? So pedogenetic means young, right? So the parthenogenesis that occurs in the larval stage is called as pedogenetic parthenogenesis, or simply called as pedogenesis, right? So pedogenesis means the parthenogenesis that occurs in the larva condition, right? So here the parthenogenesis occurs in the larva. The larval stages undergo the process of parthenogenesis without performing the sexual reproduction. So this type of parthenogenesis is called as pedogenesis or pedogenetic parthenogenesis. So the best example which was given in our book is liver fluke. So this is the life cycle of the liver fluke hepatica, right? So here if you can able to see the miracidium larva. This miracidium larva, one of the stage after getting entered into the host, the secondary host snail, it gets converted into sporocyst larva, and this sporocyst larva undergoes pedogenic parthenogenesis and get converted into redia larva. Here the sporocyst larva undergoes parthenogenesis and forms redia larva, right? So likewise the redia larva undergoes parthenogenesis and forms cercaria larva. So here the parthenogenesis occurs in the larval stages. That is why we call it as pedogenetic parthenogenesis or pedogenesis. So these are the three different types of natural parthenogenesis. The next parthenogenesis is artificial parthenogenesis. So in artificial parthenogenesis, the unfertilized egg, either by chemical induction or physical induction, they are induced to develop into an embryo. It doesn't occur by nature, but artificially by means of lowering the temperature or UV radiations or applying certain chemicals like chloroform or sucrose, whatever it may be, right? There are certain chemicals to induce the parthenogeny. So by using those chemicals or physical factors, the haploid eggs, unfertilized haploid eggs are induced to perform the parthenogenesis phenomenon, and from that egg the organism is developed. Such a type of parthenogenesis which is induced artificially, it is said to be the artificial parthenogenesis. In all the artificial parthenogenesis, in all the organisms undergoing artificial parthenogenesis, there won't be any natural parthenogenesis, but artificially we are performing the parthenogenesis by inducing through physical or chemical factors. So the next concept is classification of animals based on the site of embryonic development, and this is the last part of this first lesson, reproduction in organisms and zoology, right? So here it describes about the three different groups of animals based on the site of embryonic development. The first group of animal is said to be the oviparous, the second group is said to be viviparous, and the final group is said to be ovoviviparous. Oviparous means those are organisms that produces eggs and that lays the eggs. Egg laying animals are called as oviparous animals, right? There are a lot of egg laying animals, fishes, birds, reptiles, all comes under the oviparous animals. Here the embryo develops inside the egg. There is no direct connection between the mother and the egg or the embryo. So the embryo develops by utilizing the nourishment from the yolk which is present inside the egg. So that is how there is no direct contact between the mother's body and the developing embryo. Such a type of interaction or such animals are called as oviparous animals or egg laying animals. Another group of animal is called as viviparous animal. So in viviparous animals, the embryo develops inside the mother's womb, inside the body of the mother, and there is an intimate connection between the embryo as well as with the mother's body. Right? The embryo gets all its nourishment and energy from the mother's body through the placenta. So this type of interaction is seen in viviparous. So here in viviparous, the embryo develops inside the mother's body, and there is a connection between the mother's body and the developing embryo through the placenta. The last type is called as ovoviviparous animals. In ovovivipary condition, the embryo develops inside the egg, and the egg does not come out of the body. It will remain inside the mother's body. And inside the mother's body itself, the egg begins to develop into embryo, and then the young ones develop inside the egg. But all the time, the egg will remain inside the body of the mother. But it won't be in direct contact with the mother's body. The embryo gets its nourishment from the yolk only, not straight away from the mother. There is no placental connection. It is also called as aplacental vivipary. Ovoviviparous condition is also called as aplacental vivipary. That is, there is no placental connection between the mother's body and the developing embryo. Even though the embryo lies inside the mother's body, there is no direct connection between the mother's body and the embryo. That is why it is called as aplacental vivipary. So in ovovivipary condition, the embryo develops inside the egg, but the egg will remain inside the body of the mother. After full development, the egg detaches and the young one will come out of the mother's body. This is what we call it as ovoviviparous animal. These are the three different types of animals based on the site of embryonic development. So, in today's class, we have discussed two concepts. One is parthenogenesis, another is classification of animals based on embryonic development. So, these can be asked as the questions. Define parthenogenesis, compare complete and incomplete parthenogenesis, what is pedogenesis, write a brief note on oviparous, classify the animals based on embryonic development. All these can be asked as a 2-mark or 3-mark questions. Hope children, this session will be a useful one. Let us meet in the next episode. Thank you.